The old farmhouse sat alone at the top of a Pennsylvania ridge, dark, quiet, and surrounded by woods so dense, they say, that it swallowed the moonlight. Locals called the area Hex Hollow, a place whispered about for generations, a place where curses were feared, powwow magic was practiced, and strange happenings were said to cling to the land like a shadow. On a cold night in November of 1928, 3 men climbed that hill, believing they were walking toward the source of a deadly spell. They carried lanterns, some kerosene, and a desperation that had grown into terror. Hours later, that farmhouse was burning, and inside lay the body of the man they believed had cursed them, a farmer named Nelson Rehmeyer. What drove them wasn't revenge, and it wasn't greed. It wasn't even hatred. It was fear. Fear of a curse. Fear of a man they believed held supernatural power. Fear of a darkness they claimed was suffocating their lives. This is the true story of the Hex Hollow Murder, where folklore, superstition, and belief collided so violently that a community has never forgotten it, and the land has never escaped it. This is Tales of the Twisted, true stories of the strange, weird, bizarre, and eerie. Today, we descend into the fear, the folklore, and the lingering hauntings tied to one of America's most unsettling crimes, the Hex Hollow Murder. In the early 1900s, southern Pennsylvania was a strange crossroads of modern life and old world belief. Farmers worked the land by day, and by night, many turned to powwow. It's a centuries-old form of folk healing carried by Pennsylvania Dutch immigrants. Powwow isn't dark magic. It involved prayers, charms, remedies, and protective rituals. But like any belief system, fear distorted it. Misfortune could quickly be blamed on a hex, a curse cast by someone with knowledge of darker traditions. And in York County, one name circulated whenever illness struck or livestock died. And that name is Nelson Rehmeyer. To some, he was simply a quiet, reclusive farmer. To others, he was a man who knew things, a man with an old and powerful copy of The Long-Lost Friend, a book that was believed capable of granting protection or harm. Stories about him, they weren't shouted, they were just whispered, softly, carefully. Into this world stepped John Blymeyer, a factory worker whose life had become a chain reaction of sickness, sleeplessness, and just plain bad luck. He believed something was draining him physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Doctors offered no answers. Pastors offered no relief. So he returned to powwow. A folk healer listened to Blymeyer's troubles and finally delivered the verdict he feared most. You've been hexed. And according to the healer, the man responsible was Nelson Rehmeyer. The curse, he said, could only be broken if Blymeyer obtained a lock of Rehmeyer's hair and his copy of the Long-Lost Friend book. It was all the confirmation that Blymeyer needed. To him, this wasn't superstition, this was survival. Blymeyer couldn't break the so-called curse alone. He found 2 others who believed they were also under supernatural attack. John Curry, a frightened 14-year-old boy, and Wilbert Hess, a man convinced his family's misfortunes were rooted in dark magic. The 3 men united by fear. On the night of November 27, 1928, they walked the narrow path up Rehmeyer's Hill, lanterns flickering in the cold wind. The woods around them were thick with silence, broken only by the crunch of leaves and the sound of their own anxious breaths. To them, this wasn't a murder plot. It was a mission to break a curse that felt as real as the ground beneath their feet. Rehmeyer greeted them with surprising calm. He let them in. He offered them a place by the stove. He didn't argue. He didn't even resist. But when the men couldn't find the book, panic took over. The line between fear and violence dissolved in an instant. They attacked Rehmeyer, killing him on the floor of his own home. In their terror-driven logic, the curse was still active, so they poured kerosene through the house, believing fire would destroy whatever supernatural power remained. But the house didn't burn. It smoldered, singed a little. It blackened the floorboards and walls, but it refused to be consumed by the flames. Some in the community later claimed that this was proof of Rehmeyer's powers, a strange protection, a sign that the curse didn't end with his death. Whether superstition or coincidence, the fire's failure became part of the legend forever. The trial made national headlines. 3 men, regular working-class men, had killed someone, not for money or hatred, but because they believe he held supernatural power over them. All were convicted, none were executed, and yet the true legacy of the Hex Hollow murder was just beginning. For decades after the killing, stories spread of strange activity at Rehmeyer's Hill. People who visited the area claimed they heard footsteps circling the property at night. Slow, steady pacing footsteps that never came with a visible figure. Others reported seeing floating lights, the old old lanterns swinging between the trees, though no one was there to carry them. Some described the smell of smoke drifting across the hill, thick, bitter, and unmistakable, despite the fact that the fire had burned nearly a century earlier. Photographers reported cameras refusing to work, batteries draining instantly, shadows appearing in windows of the rebuilt farmhouse even when every room inside was empty. Locals swore that the land itself felt heavy, as though it remembered what happened. Rehmeyer's family, who eventually rebuilt the house and preserved it as a historical site, acknowledges the stories without feeding into them. They say they do not believe Nelson was a witch, but even they admit the property has an atmosphere that's hard to explain. Is it haunting? Is it history? Is it a community still wrestling with guilt and folklore? Whatever the explanation, Hex Hollow remains one of the most chilling crime sites in America, not because of the supernatural, but because belief alone drove ordinary people to kill. Belief created the curse. Belief fueled the murder. And belief is what keeps the legend alive to this day. I myself am from York, Pennsylvania. I have heard so many different stories on Rehmeyer's Hollow. In fact, I think even in the 80s, they would do haunted tours, like a scary trail kind of thing in that area. And all the different stories I heard, one of the most that was fascinating was that when they burned his body, supposedly it burned a hole through the floor, and no matter what they do to fix that hole, it would still leave like a blackened mark on the floor where the body laid. I have no idea if that's true or not. I don't think it is. But those are the kind of stories that I heard as a kid growing up in York, Pennsylvania. You've been listening to Tales of the Twisted, true stories of the strange, weird, bizarre, and eerie. If this episode pulled you into the shadows of Hex Hollow, be sure to follow the show, subscribe, and leave a rating and review. It helps the show grow and keeps these unsettling stories alive. Join me next time as we uncover another case where reality twists into something far darker than fiction. Until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and stay twisted.